What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again, and today we're talking about my Week 9 NFL Power Rankings. Also want to wish everyone a happy Halloween. May not be able to tell, but I'm the Kevin James meme this year, so it was very practical, very simple. Decided to do that. Let me know what you are for Halloween down below in the comments section, and let me know maybe the best costume that you've seen this year. I'm always intrigued by those types of stories. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our Week 9 Power Rankings. We had an interesting week of football on Sunday, so let's talk about who's moving up, who's moving down. Cardinals and Raiders each down a spot. The Cardinals are still pretty competitive, like 1-7 team. Moving on from Josh Dobbs, now we get to see Clayton Tune for a week. I'm pretty excited to see what that's all about. And then hand the baton off to Kyler Murray. So this has been a really competitive 1-7 team. They're only going to get that much better with Kyler coming back in another week. So kind of the perfect bad season if you're a Cardinals fan. And then the Raiders, man, Monday Night Football, that was as poorly played a 12-point loss I think I've ever seen. I mean, you have two completely, airmailed touchdowns from, Jimmy Garoppolo to Devontae Adams. I know he's pissed, rightfully so. Kind of thought maybe he'd get dealt to the deadline, but ultimately he doesn't. But yeah, the Raiders are bad. Max Crosby's the only guy on the defense making plays, and if Jimmy Garoppolo can't hit Devontae Adams, the offense is a little sluggish. They're having a hard time running the ball, so tough time to be a Raiders fan. Panthers are up 2 spots after collecting their first win. One of the best games, maybe the best game Bryce Young's played so far, especially that last drive. Got to see a lot of Adam Thielen too. It's just about time Chuba Hubbard takes over as the lead running back, which, little small anecdote here, drafted him at the last pick in every fantasy league that I'm in this year because I thought he was better than Miles Sanders, and maybe now I get to reap the benefits of that. Then we get to the Giants. They're down a spot. It just wasn't pretty. The defense is overall playing well, but you finish a game with -9 passing yards. Yeah, that's not pretty. That's not very good. And obviously, it's Tommy DeVito. They're down to their third stringer. Times are tough right now. It does sound like Daniel Jones could be back, so I expect this team to become a little bit more competitive then, but as it stands right now, it's just a bad football team. Commanders aren't much better. They're also down a spot. They did hang tough with Philadelphia. They just kind of have done that twice over the last 3 weeks, but sandwiched there in the middle of it is a 14-7 loss to the Giants, so that's still not good. Sam Howell continues to give you these games where it's like, dude, like if you only watch the Eagles game, and now I know there's someone out there who's only watching Sam Howell versus the Eagles, they're going to think this guy's a stud. And I mean, he's a really good passer of the football, just got to clean up, the time to throw stuff. And ultimately, he was playing a really good game for 3.5 quarters, and then the last portion of the fourth quarter, an interception to Reed Blankenship. He starts holding on to the ball longer, the sacks start to pile up, and ultimately the Commanders just aren't as good as Philadelphia. So Washington down a spot, Chicago's down 2 spots. They did just get Montez Sweat at the deadline, so I kind of thought about maybe counteracting that, but let's just focus on the games from this last weekend. I am excited to see Montez Sweat. I think that's easily the best defensive lineman on that roster now, an impact player in the run game and in the pass game, and that defense really needs it. And honestly, it was just not a fair matchup. I think Matt Eberflus has had that defense playing better, but the Chargers had one of their games where they're kind of unstoppable, and the Bears had no answer for it, and Tyson Bagent is not going to go toe-to-toe with Justin Herbert, so kind of an expected outcome there. Patriots are on bye, so they're just going to stay put here at 26. Then we get the Buccaneers. They're down a spot. They lost on Thursday night to the Bills. Baker kind of made it close there towards the very end of the game. But ultimately, no cigar, right? And I mean, I think the defense is still playing pretty well. But now we're starting to see some regression towards that offense. Tough. Actually, I misspoke there. New England lost to Miami, so second time they've lost to the Dolphins. I don't think that's the worst loss in the world, but they jumped out in front 7-0, and then it was not competitive from that point on. But I'll give the Patriots where they are. Maybe I should have flipped them to the Bears. Let me know what you think down below. All right, then we get on to the Atlanta Falcons. They're down a spot. Kind of a weird loss. Thought they were going to be able to beat the Titans, but the Titans have a great run defense. We'll talk about them in a little bit, and that forced Desmond Ridder to win. And then also you get the switch mid-game to Taylor Heineke, who I don't think is much. I don't think he's actually even better. I think Taylor Heineke might be the worst quarterback rostered in the NFL as a primary backup. There are third stringers worse than him, but and there are emergency quarterbacks, practice squad guys worse than him. But as a backup, I think he's probably the worst backup in the league. Just my opinion. I don't think Taylor Heineke is very good. Rough situation under center, and then you just can't do much more than that. Really, the story of that game is Will Levis. So we'll just move on to the Titans a little bit. Then we're on to the Colts, and I mean I guess were the team that finally figured out how to make the Saints offense look explosive. So that's probably not a good thing for Indianapolis fans. That secondary has a lot of young players. There's some talent. There's some upside there. I think Juju Brents generally has been pretty good, but this was not the game to say the Colts are a defensive immovable object, maybe you could say, but not the best game they played on that side of the ball. And the offense, I think for the most part could keep up, but giving up 30 plus to the Saints, that's the tough part. And so this is kind of a frustrating game for Colts fans, I feel like, because you probably went into that game saying, hey, if we, keep the Saints, under 20, we're going to be just fine. And, it's the offense that, we're going to have to be concerned about. But really in this game, the offense wasn't terrible. It was just the defense that didn't do its part. So that's got to be frustrating. Broncos up 7 spots. Now, I don't normally like getting carried away with this. Oh my gosh, got a knee-jerk reaction. This team's got to be up 10 spots. What we saw Sunday is the most important thing ever. No, but I do genuinely think that the Broncos have gotten better, specifically on the defensive side of the ball the last 3 weeks. So even just that positive regression to the mean from being historically bad to just being solid, which I would have expected preseason from Vance Joseph. Didn't think they were going to be as good as they were last year, but still not as bad as we saw for the first 5 weeks of the NFL season. Now they're getting back on track in that regard. So that in itself is moving the needle up in the right direction. And then, this offense is generally playing pretty well. We get to see Jerry Jeudy get in the end zone. That's exciting. Russell Wilson's playing pretty clean, efficient games. I think 22 is probably the better spot versus 29, especially now that defense has kind of found its footing. But the great thing about power rankings is they're iterative. So if the Broncos turn around and start sucking again, guess what? They'll be back to 25, 26, 27, so on and so forth. Then we get the Packers and the Rams both down spots. They trade places with the Titans and the Saints. For the Packers, it's just, it's a young offense. I'm just not sure there's a whole lot of pieces that are actually good. Jordan Love's a first-year starter, but it doesn't mean he's good. The receivers are really young. A lot of two second-year guys and then a rookie, So in theory, there's upside there, and there definitely could be, but to me, they're all complementary pieces, and that's why I was, maybe Devontae Adams will go back to Green Bay because that would have been the perfect situation for him. He has help around him. He never had that in the last 3 years at Green Bay. It was just him, and they were figuring out the rest. And now it feels like they have a decent complementary set of receivers, but no one who's an alpha. And until they find that out, it's going to be a tough time coming. Also, the offensive line's not as good as it was, 4 years ago. So just a tough time to be a Packers fan. Sorry, guys. I know this is probably a weird point of the season where it's like, man, we're supposed to be at the top of the division, and now we're just not. The Rams down 2 spots. Matt Stafford gets hurt. That's not great. Brett Rippon, not the best backup in the league. And the defense was a little more exposed this week too. So just a tough game. But also the Rams are not going to be very good if Matt Stafford misses games. So the UCL sprain, it sounded like. So he's day to day. Hopefully he gets to suit back up on Sunday. And if he does, then this team's going to be probably fine. But if not, this team's going to be bad. So we'll see on the Stafford report there. Like I said, Saints, Titans, they trade places with the Rams and the Packers. Great to see the Saints offense finally explode. A game where like Derek Carr had more than 300 yards passing, but it wasn't on like 30 completions. So I got to see him air it out and make some deep shots there. Rashid Shaheed continues to be one of the most underrated storylines of the league. Guy just makes plays every time he touches the football. And the defense, gave up a decent amount of points, but it did enough. It did its job. So really strong showing there from the Saints. Maybe the best game they played yet this season. So that's really exciting. And then we get to the Titans. So DeAndre Hopkins with an absolute showing, his best game of the season for sure. That Titans defense also was a great matchup against Atlanta. They did their job. They're a great run defense. They took away the run. They forced Desmond Ridder to beat them through the air. That's going to be, the blueprint, if it's not already, against the Atlanta Falcons. So the Titans executed to perfection. I guess I'll talk a little bit about Will Levis. Really good game. I don't think it was perfect. There were definitely, that first touchdown to DeAndre Hopkins is more D-Hop than Levis. The other one where D-Hop's just behind the defense and behind the secondary, well, that's a blown coverage. But that last touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, now that's arm talent. That's touch. That's some spicy stuff there. So if there's anything you're looking at of this game saying, hey, like Will Levis, what do you think about him? That last throw is the one to kind of hang your hat on if you're optimistic about him. All the other touchdowns, really, you could just say were support elevated, right? So those are the throws that maybe if you're a Will Levis doubter, you look to and say, hey, if not for DeAndre Hopkins, what happens here? And I think both arguments could be fair. So we'll see this Thursday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be a good test for him. The Steelers, I don't have the moving. Obviously they lost and it wasn't pretty. The offense continues to shoot itself in the foot. The defense is making a lot of plays, though, creating a lot of turnovers, so that's why I kind of drew this line in the sand. We could see Thursday Night Football, who's better, Steelers, Tennessee, so give it another week. Maybe these two teams are at least trading spots. But I didn't feel like the Titans had as great a game to move them up 3 spots. Same thing with the Saints. Like, it was just one blip on the radar. I don't like overreacting. So they played well this week, but, I don't know. I just wanted to hold the line here with Pittsburgh at 17. And if the Steelers lose on Thursday, them in Tennessee at the worst are flipping. Maybe even the Saints are jumping them too. But I still think generally, Pittsburgh's had a pretty good season. They've been able to win despite their offense, and I think they're still slightly better than the Tennessee Titans. All right, next set of teams here. Kind of the same thing with the Houston Texans. I held the line here at 16, and most of the time if I hold you in a week, the next weekend there's a little bit more movement, like you may move 6 spots or you may move, maybe even like a 7. just because I'm really catching up to the curve there from no movement the week before. Houston, I don't think C.J. Stroud played bad, and I don't think really anybody played bad for the Texans. It just didn't all come together and get the big plays on offense. And Bryce Young makes the late drive in the game that ultimately makes the difference. It gives the Panthers the walk-off field goal. So I don't think it was a bad game. I just think the Panthers kind of gutted it out and stole it from him late. So I'm not too worried about Houston. I think they're just going to be just fine. But again, next week, depending on what happens this Sunday, there's some room for potential drastic correction, if you will. Then we get to the Vikings. They're down a spot. Chargers are up a spot. Decided to flip them. The Vikings did win. I don't like dropping teams when they lose, but call this the Kirk Cousins tax. They're going to get worse at the position. Josh Dobbs is just not as good as Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins was playing MVP caliber ball. So I know he's kind of fun to pick on, but tough time to lose him, especially as you were, 2 weeks away from getting Justin Jefferson back. Jordan Addison looks like a stud. Yeah, that offense was about to be really, really fun to watch, but now Josh Dobbs is just going to try to keep the fort afloat and maybe get this team into a wild card spot. Chargers looked like a buzzsaw on Sunday Night Football. It's one of the best games we've seen that offense have, and then the Bears didn't really have an offensive, didn't really have an offense caliber to really test the Chargers and where they're weak, specifically in the secondary. So just kind of the right matchup for the Chargers. They played a really good game. Good to see them blow somebody out. They always play these one-possession games. It was good to be able to turn the TV off early on Sunday Night Football because the Chargers were doing their job. They were by far and away the better team, and they played like it. Browns are down 4 spots. Don't want to get too overcorrective here, but part of it's okay, when are we going to see Deshaun Watson? What's this whole situation playing out? So call this the PJ Walker tax, but also now they're moving on from Donovan Peoples-Jones. So that receiver, depth is going to be tested. Hopefully Cedric Tillman's healthy, and that's just kind of a one-for-one swap. But ultimately that offense just hasn't been uber impressive. And really they had chances to put Seattle away multiple times in that fourth quarter, and they just couldn't. Is that PJ Walker? Is it, would the same thing would have happened with Deshaun Watson? Who knows? It's impossible to tell. But ultimately, because they didn't put them away and the way the board shook out, they're down 4 spots. So I still think they're a really good football team, one of the best defenses in football. But until we get to Deshaun Watson, they're going to pay a little bit of a tax for that. But also, I think this 12 through 9 area is just about as good team for team as the Cleveland Browns. Jets are going to stay put. Look, they sweated out an overtime win against a team that had -9 passing yards. Need I say more? They're not moving up, but they did get the win, so they're not moving down. And man, it's funny. Before that field goal to send it to overtime, I'm seeing Zach Wilson trying on the field, and I look to my girlfriend and I say, well, this game's done. Zach Wilson's taking the field. And ultimately, that was the one drive. All I got to do is doubt Zach Wilson just enough for him to be able to prove me wrong. So, Jets fans, I will be doubting him this upcoming Sunday. You are welcome in advance. Seahawks basically flipping places with where they were previously where the Browns are. Moving up 2 spots. Had somebody comment, and if you think I don't listen to your comments, this is proof that that's wrong. But basically, a Seahawks fan just pointing out, man, below the Jets, are you kidding? And the more I kind of thought about it and sat with me, I was like, yeah, I probably should have flipped those 2. Not the biggest difference in the world, 11 versus 12 or 12 versus 13 last week, but I do think the Seahawks are, especially after looking at this last week, they beat a better opponent and they did it more convincingly, right? And the quarterback play is just night and day. That being said, Geno Smith's got to cut it out with these red zone turnovers, man. This man, for whatever reason, inside the 20 will make some of the biggest head-scratching decisions. I think it was the Cardinals game last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where he had a couple throws where I was like, dude, what are you looking at? And it was reminiscent of what Trevor Lawrence did this past Sunday, too. So sometimes quarterbacks that are really good make these decisions where it's like, what the hell are you looking at? But as long as Geno Smith's not doing that, there's really not many other critiques I have to his game. He's having a really solid season. Good to see JSN get more and more involved in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Lions are going to stay put. It was a good win. Shouldn't have been a 12-point game. They had a touchdown called back for a holding at the goal line. It probably should have been a 19-point win instead of that 12-point margin. But the defense was dominant. Ben Johnson had that offense rolling. Playmakers making plays left, right, and center. Jahmyr Gibbs breakout game. That was awesome to see. Sam Laporta, another rookie, just absolutely showing out. Brian Branch, that rookie class basically just had a night there in Detroit. It was good to see them get that bounce-back win. It was a win that they should have expected to have. They did. And, ultimately the Raiders are the number 31 team in these power rankings. So, the team with the more impressive win here was definitely the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's not get it twisted. And actually, they moved up 2 spots, so apologies on my error there on the graphic. Bengals up 2 spots, and they beat the 49ers. And part of the reason I bet Bengals money line was, hey, if Cincinnati plays their best game, they could beat anybody in the league. So, I'm getting them at, +4.5, +5. And then the money line, I can't remember off the top of my head, but, you're giving them that many points. It's a juiced money line play when all Cincy has to do is, all they have to do is play their best game. And they're a team caliber of beating the 49ers. To me, the spread should have been closer to 2.5. Easy to say with hindsight for sure. But ultimately, that's, why I bet Bengals money line. So put your money where your mouth is. And big time win there. Offense looked awesome. It feels like the Cincinnati Bengals are back. Not only the offense, but also Lou Anarumo. That defense was fantastic. The kept mixing coverages, mixing rush packages, and numbers that were coming towards the quarterback. They just basically kept San Francisco on their toes, and Brock Purdy didn't know what was coming his way on any given play. So Lou Anarumo looks like he's back on track. Joe Burrow on that offense looks like they're back on track. All I have to say, the Bengals, big time stock up. Sure to see them get in this top 8 within a week's time. Then we get the Bills, Jags, and Cowboys all staying put. Bills good win against the Bucs. I actually think the Bucs were pretty competitive, so that's a pretty solid win. I don't want to take anything away from them by not moving them up, but just didn't have room to move them up. Gabe Davis with a really strong game. Also, Dalton Kincaid breakout game. Gabe Davis looked awesome after the catch. Khalil Shakir with a couple of big catches, especially early on. It was good to see the rest of that offense take apart, and it just didn't have to be the Stephon Diggs show. Would have loved to see this team add a corner at the deadline, however. Jags, again, staying put. Not the prettiest win against Pittsburgh, but really it's the 3 red zone or, 3 turnovers in positive territory, 2 fumbles, which that's just Pittsburgh being, just a pain in the ass defense to go against, and they make those plays. And then there's the head-scratching red zone pick from Lawrence. I don't know what he was looking at or if he thought he was thrown out of the back of the end zone. I don't know, but that was a weird one. But, at least it came in a game where they won, so it wasn't like a play that's haunting Jags fans or anything like that. But pretty good game against a tough opponent on the road, too. Never want to take that away. Just wish I could have moved them up. On the Cowboys, good solid win. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say there for Dallas, but kind of the same thing where I just didn't have anywhere to put them. So because of that, yeah, it's a 23-point win against the Rams. They were dominant. There's just nowhere for them to go, really. Because I still think the 49ers are better. And we got to see them go head-to-head, and San Francisco won. So, need I say more? And I don't always go head-to-head, but that was one where it's like, yeah, if the Cowboys were better, that was their chance to prove it. So I still got the 49ers ahead of them. They've lost 3 straight, I understand, but I still think they're up there, second best team in the NFC. I really do think that. And I'm not worried about this little stretch. I think getting Trent Williams back is going to be huge. Getting Deebo Samuel back is going to be huge. I think Brock Purdy's fine. They probably will be looking for an upgrade this offseason, though. I could totally see them looking to go beyond fine and find someone really, really good. And we'll see. With the Achilles injury to Kirk Cousins, that feels like it's going to be a tough ask. Maybe you could start Brock for 8 weeks, and then Cousins comes out. Maybe that could work, but feels like a tall order to ask for. But I still think San Francisco's fine, and that defense only got better today by adding Chase Young. Then we get to the Dolphins. They're up a spot. I mean, when they're rolling, it's the best offense in the league. Speed everywhere, yada, yada, yada. You've heard of those 1,000 times. Defense looked pretty good. Xavier Howard hasn't lived up to my expectations, but getting Jalen Ramsey back made an immediate impact. And I think with those 2 corners, that pass rush gets that much more lethal. And they're already a pretty tough team to beat on the ground, but that's going to become the avenue to which you beat this team. Hey, they're going to play 2 high shells. We're going to have to beat them on the ground, and especially on early downs. Teams can do that. All right, it's interesting. But if they can't, I think it's going to be a tall order to beat the Miami Dolphins. Ravens also up a spot. This is just a really good football team, right? I just think the Baltimore Ravens are playing as good a football as maybe we've seen during the Lamar Jackson era, that or the 2019 season, right? I know this one got close late. The Cardinals kind of get that late, push. And I don't mean that in a betting sense. They just kind of make it closer than it really felt the entire game. But this one felt out of hand from pretty much the first quarter on. And good on the Cardinals for being scrappy. That's basically what it comes down to. Jonathan Gannon's got them fighting. But the Ravens still were able to stave them off. Lamar Jackson's tossed the ball great. Obviously, he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. Thought they might make a move at the deadline for a running back, but they decided not to. And also, Mike McDonald, prime head coaching candidate. I love what he's doing with that defense. And again, if not for garbage time, this game's a lot more spread out than a 7-point difference in the final score. Then I have the Eagles and Chiefs switching places. Not worried about Kansas City. Flu game from Patrick Mahomes. All it did was make me say, damn, Jordan going crazy back in the 90s. Mad respect after seeing Mahomes struggle with it, because that does not look fun to play with. So Mahomes is under the weather. They're still not getting a whole lot of production there from their pass catchers. So were they a team that maybe could go get DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe there were calls. Who knows? Do you think that wide receiver still could be a spot that costs them a potential Super Bowl run? But, and also a quiet day for Travis Kelce, so, all that kind of correlates. If you take away Kelce, it's, then you're leaning on those receivers, and if you don't have anybody stepping up, that offense is stagnant. That's basically what we saw this weekend. The defense, though, is still playing great football, man, and it kept them in the game. There was really no reason, because they weren't playing anywhere near as good as the Denver Broncos were, but that defense just kept them in the game, and it felt like multiple chances there. Okay, now Kansas City, okay, there it is. There's the big play. Oh, Sky Moore's open in the end zone. There it is. 1-score game. Oh, wait, Sky Moore drops it, which... Can we talk about that? Sky Moore's a guy I loved coming out of Western Michigan. And this guy has seemingly forgot how to catch the football. He had a huge muff punt his rookie year, week 3 against the Colts. That's a big reason why they lost to Indianapolis. And I feel like when you use these receivers on special teams and plays like that happen, it ruins their confidence. And I don't know if there's just an emotional feeling behind that, or if there's actual science behind there. And if there is, definitely let me know. But feel like from that play on, man, Sky Moore's just been a walking disappointment every time I watch him, man. He's got way too many drops for a guy who has massive hands for someone who's 5'10". Like, his hand size was a huge reason to be excited about the Chiefs drafting him despite his size. But yeah, he's been a major disappointment. So man, wish he could have had that touchdown, because that game could have definitely played out very, very different had he made that play. But they didn't. So question marks at the receiver position continue to linger for Kansas City. But luckily enough, that defense is awesome. And then the Eagles, man, A.J. Brown is a machine, and I had to put his one-handed snag in the thumbnail. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully that's what brought you onto the video here. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles are still, same kind of narrative, really complete team. Can win a game early, they can win a game late if you stay close with them. And ultimately, you see the depth they have on the trenches and how big of a strength that is, because by the time you get to the fourth quarter, you feel it. Like, those guys are just better. And that's when they really feel the divide. The Eagles' trench game versus everyone else. The fourth quarter is where it feels the most evident, specifically with that pass rush, and ultimately, like we talked about with the Commanders, second portion of the fourth quarter, the Eagles were dominating at the line of scrimmage, and Howell started to rack up the sacks that he was taking. But yeah, the offense is still rolling. Run games look solid. A.J. Brown's a machine. And ultimately, as long as those trenches stay relatively healthy, once you get to the fourth quarter, the Eagles are going to be a handful to deal with. So whether they're playing from behind, or they're playing with a lead, or it's a tie game, they're kind of a daunting team in the fourth quarter. It's going to be something I continue to keep an eye on when it comes to betting scenarios moving forward, especially in games where they're losing or they're tied and they have a reason to continue to stay competitive. It's probably going to be a continuous bet that I will make. But guys, that does it for my Week 9 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you think down below. Who's too high? Who's too low? Who's your favorite team? Where should they be in these Power Rankings? Also, let me know what your Halloween costumes are. Let me know what you think about the Kevin James fit. It was very simple. I know it's not perfect, but nevertheless, hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Comment those thoughts down below. Until next time, my name is Teej, and I am signing off.